So we'll be starting. Good afternoon, everybody. We were the same team that presented universal design principles in the morning session, and now we'll be continuing with the practice session. So, yeah, Abhinand, you can continue. Yeah, Abhinand, you can go next. Just a small recall of the morning session. So the seven main principles that we saw in the morning is the equitable use, flexible use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low effort, and size and space. These are the main things we saw in the morning session, and now we'll be applying them for various use cases. Yeah, next. Vinay. Yeah. So the morning in the morning session we saw one case study, the Japan train one. Now we'll be seeing the next one, which is Gmail, which is like a software case study. So I'll just go through the all the seven principles, and we'll just see how Gmail has applied it, and then we'll have a practice session with Figma to see how they are applying. So the first one is equitable use, and I know we have all used Gmail, right? And they have a really good interface. And for equitable use, the main thing we can say is they provide it in any language that you want. You can change it to any language you want. You can go to settings, and there'll be an option called language, and you can change it to any language. So they're not alienating anybody based on language. So that is a really good thing. However, one small change that is not yet present in the standard Gmail is that it's not visual impairment friendly, because there is no option for reading out the mails. There are some add-ons, but right now this traditional Gmail, there is no option for that. So that is one con of Gmail right now. And then next one is flexible use, and we have all seen this, right? We can mark any mail as unread or read, important, star, and we can even star mails and then label them. We can make some folders and put these mails inside those folders and all. So it's there. It has a very flexible use. Yeah, it's very flexible. And also again, coming back to the same one, they have a very good settings. So you can change your language, you can change your profile and everything. So again, flexible is similar to customizable, right? And Gmail is highly customizable. You can change the background. You can do so many things. And then also there are multiple options or multiple buttons available for performing the same action. They provide the buttons for marking some mails as unread or read. At the same time, you can do it through other methods also. So next. Now, a simple and intuitive use. In Gmail, you would have seen that at the top it automatically categorizes your mails under primary, social, promotions, and also there'll be other things like forums and updates. So that is a really good thing, because we don't need to most of the things under social will actually be like a lot of mails from Facebook. So those things are not important. So as it categorizes this, it gives a very simple interface. So you can you can attend to only the mails which are important and need your reply and things like that. So also does this grouping of elements, as I mentioned. You can those buttons like switching your account, signing out, and settings. Those are also grouped together. So that way you don't need to search for, if you have a specific function you want to do, you don't need to search where it is. It will be grouped and you can easily identify it. Next. Yeah, the next thing is perceptible information, and this thing is also really good, that if you suppose you have not read a mail yet, and it will be in bold, and the background will also be completely white. That way, when you look at your inbox, you can directly identify which mails you have not which you haven't read yet, without even seeing, without any prompts. Just based on the color and the boldness, you can directly identify. Your eye can catch it immediately. So that is a really good thing. And for tolerance for error, they also, whenever you mark a conversation as important, or you delete mail, whenever you do any such action, even if after you send mails, they provide a small prompt at the bottom, which will say like you have marked this as important and you have deleted this mail, and then they provide an undo button also. So in the morning session, we saw that tolerance for error is like it will be good if you provide an undo functionality, so that even if people do something, even if they delete a mail by accident, you can still undo it. Yes, sir.
When you delete this mail, what is the drawback with the Gmail? If there is a conversation with many times. And if you delete in between any of this one, it delete whole link.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That, yeah, I also faced that many times.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is
So I have faced
unfortunately.
very typical problem because I have some typical mail want to delete, and all the previous and after the whole link is get deleted, and of course I can recover from that this one, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, it is a thing. Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
is actually that is a con of Gmail. That is, yeah, that again that violates the intuitiveness. One of the points was there, right? It actually violates that because we think when we are deleting it, we obviously think that we are deleting only that mail, right? But if when we are deleting it, it's deleting the whole thing. So that is a problem.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, Abhinand, you can go next. Uh, and then, of course, low physical effort. They provide keyboard shortcuts for everything, so you can use that. And also, there again, this it's a combination of low physical effort and size and space. If you see, all of their buttons are like properly placed, and their sizes are actually based on their importance. Like if you see in the left, they'll have everything like they'll have the inbox, trash, and all those categories. Main categories will usually be in the left side of the web page, and then the compose button is kept like separately on the top left, so that you can directly identify that because that is like the most important button in this entire website, right? You have to make a new mail. That is the main thing. And then the rest of the mails are centered, and other we also saw other things like the bold, and so that all comes under size and space and low physical effort. Yes, and also yeah, the attachments also. The one good thing is whenever we attach something in the mail, it comes at the bottom. So if you are searching for some attachment, directly it comes at the bottom. And also in the Gmail main web page itself, they show the attachment in the right side of the mail. If you are seeing like each mail is like a row, right? And then it will have the name of the subject of will be displayed, and on the right side of that row they actually display like what all are attachments. Right side of the bottom side, sorry, below the text they have like which attachments are there, so you don't even need to open each mail to view which attachment is there. Yeah, Abhinandan can go.
Uh, yeah, so we will be showing the design of Figma, Figma tool. I'll 1 minute. Uh, Abhinand, yeah. So I'll just share my screen. Uh, uh, yeah. So uh, please tell me when you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's good. It's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, okay. I assume like everyone can see my screen. Yeah. Thank you. So here is the Figma tool. I mean the Figma website. It's a web provided. It's a website for creating design, similar to Adobe XD, but Adobe XD is a desktop application. So here you can see that there is a set of design templates which we have. If we create a new account, they give this prototyping how to do and Figma basics and tutorials. So I'll just show you how we can create. If we create a new design file, you just click this, then it'll take some time to load. Yeah, so you can add more people in Figma, and you can collaborate with different users, and you can create the design. So you can actually have a template, and there are many existing templates which you can find on online for a particular design which you want. And you can there are if you can see my pointer, so here there are different features like adding a new file, sketch file, and keeping an image, and you can view the object, and you can there are different rules and different features available, so you can use this. And this is if we have an object, say rectangle. If I have placed a rectangle, then I want to scale it. I can scale it like this, but this scale feature will scale it in the ratio, aspect ratio as it is. So it will not, the width dimensions will not change with if you put in the scale mode. And this feature, there are two different other features like frame and slice. The frame and slice, what it does is a slice basically will cut an image into smaller portions, and we can then join those portions when we need. And we can add different objects like rectangle, line, arrow, ellipse, polygon as in what we need. And there's a pencil option. There's a text box option where you can type, so you can just type hello. And this is the pan option, you can just pan. and this is the comments option. Now let me come here. So there is a option called in the right side. If you can see my mouse, there is an option called iPhone Pro and 8 plus, iPhone 8 plus. So what it does is basically it creates a a template, or it gives you a area as per the dimensions of an iPhone 8. So now what we have to do is whatever design which we want to do, the way our application should look like, we can design the whole thing within this, keeping into mind the size of the iPhone 8. And then we can create, say if I have to put a image or put a center button, like a profile picture in the center, and then a text of some person, like some random name, like Pranav itself. So you can have this, and you can keep the constraints of where it should come, the dimensions, the text style. So this is flexible. We can choose whatever we want, the size of it. So things like that. And then you can add the colors, fonts, and stroke, how it should look like. And if I just place it here, and the, this is the basically the design structure of how we want our application to look like. Then the device we have chosen like this, and there's an option called prototyping. So what prototyping basically means is, I will explain in more detail with our Figma, the Gmail which we had, Gmail example which we had taken. So what basically prototyping does is, you can connect your two or more templates or frames, and then you can what do you say, you can create a animation effect basically. So this you have another template or another page, so I can just connect it based on whatever feature we want to provide. It provides this. Now I'll show you the Gmail which we had I mean the Gmail template which we had created. So if you can see my screen here, yeah, so this is the, we had taken a already existing template from online. So there are existing templates for Gmail like this. So they have created the box button similar to, there's some other designer who has created already this. So we are just replicating or using this for our purpose, for our explanation purpose. So you can see we have created this like similar to how Gmail looks. But as Kaushik had mentioned previously, there are few design elements which are not available in Gmail, which would if it is available, then it would have, it will help the user. So like there is no option for speech to text, or a text to speech kind of thing. So if any visually impaired person is there, who's not who's unable to type, or who is unable to read a message, they can there is no option in Gmail which is provided for reading the message or reading the email for us. So we have just created a sample how it should look like, or how it will look if we create a element like this, and things like that. And this is another similar thing, like we have copy pasted this. And if you come down here, not this, sorry, yeah, so here is one another reply page. So if I want to reply to a message, I can just click on that, or you can read the message, and it will automatically tell whatever is in the Gmail. And if you want to reply to that Gmail, I'll just click the reply button, and then there will be a microphone available. So whatever I speak, it will record. So this tool basically provides us the view of how it will look like, or how we can how it will be viewed by the customer, the backend and the connections of how you can run a speech language, speech to text or text to speech algorithms. Those are the you know responsibilities of a developer. So here we are just looking at the perspective of how the user looks this UI. So you can see there is a microphone, and there is a speaker button. Now if you can see my mouse cursor, there is a present button. So we have actually already done the connections and all. If you can see, there are blue connections, blue arrows. So what it does is basically we are connecting one UI element, and creating based on some action it is performing, or going to a next table. So if I play it right now, 1 minute, I'm just sharing this screen. Yeah, so it's loading the play thing. Okay, 1 minute. I'll just put it to fit to scale. Yeah. So if you can see the screen, this is just how it will look like. And if I click this button, this mic recording button, then it will actually play the text, and I mean it will record or it will display the thing, and it will show the Gmail whatever it is. And if I want to reply, if I have this mail which I got and I want to reply, I can just click this reply button and I will get this reply box. And in this reply box, if I click this microphone, and then the microphone feature gets enabled, and then we can speak whatever we want and it will get recorded here and we can send the mail. So basically these features are not existing in the Gmail currently. So we are giving an example of how you can use this Figma tool to see or visualize the extra features which you feel like you can add to a product. So this is for, we have showed an example for an existing product, so you can do similarly for new products also, or new software, whichever application which you are interested in. So basically this is the whole overview of Figma, and an example of what we have planned. So yeah, so,
No,
yes.
it's nice to have this template, but when you want to connect, for example, I want to put in some ID, integrated development environment, maybe in the PHP, Java, .NET. So how this design can be taken into account in that ID?
Okay, so yeah, it's a good question. So basically, this design elements which we
Like,
have
can
created.
you do one thing? We can have simple form of the web, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some side menu and all that. And we see how we can import in the PHP or .NET platform or Python platform.
Okay, so actually we cannot actually
No,
directly
no,
import. Okay,
we will not do any coding, but just a
okay,
way how one can integrate into the development environment.
okay, fine. So yeah, okay. So I'll explain. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So how it will be this that
So
I'll.
actually, this is simply only for the UI part. We cannot
Only
actually use this in
no,
the
only
code.
UI part. But when you want to implement in any ID, how one can make use of that? Is it available as an HTML pages or need to export in the XML? So how we can take it into a development platform? That is the question.
Actually, yeah, you know, in the development process or design process, there always the first stage of the design process is concept design, right? So in the concept design, you are actually visualizing the wireframes or simple visualization on a web presentation. So that by that's separate category called design evaluation. So we are evaluating whether this is feasible or not. And only after this process we can actually go to the development phase. Yeah.
Eh, yes, sir. Like he told, these tools, right? It's Figma and Adobe XD. These are actually used in the starting part only. They are not directly exported and used in coding. So what the people in app development will do is basically the design they try to confirm on the design, like the UI elements where they should be placed and what all these things. And then only this file, right, whatever we are seeing, this cannot be directly exported, and we cannot get a direct HTML code out of it. So what they do is they first these things are called like wireframes, right? They first create
For
these
approval, for approval.
exactly, sir. So they first create these wireframes, and then after that they try out a lot of different UIs and different positions, different sizes and everything. And then after they finalize the design, they then only they go into the coding, and they are there in the coding. They replicate this only. They don't. You can't just directly export
Yeah.
this.
Me, do you want to say in the development part, we have to create the same effect that we have created in the this template?
Yes, sir, yes, sir, like that only. Again, these provide only few transitions, right? But in actual app development, they will have some custom transitions that because like suppose a company is doing some app, they will already they already would have made some apps and all. So they will have the transitions, and they are producing, same companies producing different apps. They want their apps to be consistent with each other. So they will not use these transitions. They will have their own transitions and things like that. But so they will first try to see whether it all fits in this. Simply to see whether it looks good or whether it's useful. That this is only for the initial to check out how the flow is working.
Okay.
Then they replicate everything using their own tools for whatever in whatever platform they try to make that.
So Venkata, as you mentioned that is get export to the HTML. So once it is HTML, then we can use as a template, that will fine. Otherwise, what happen? There are some feature which may not be coded. As you have template here, there are some buttons or some some icons. So if this is a feature of exporting in the HTML, I think that will fine. That will fine.
Yes, sir. I think the standard one doesn't. I think you have to do through a plugin. Uh, but again, like most people generally don't. Yeah, that is one feature. We can use it. We can export it. But most people prefer to use this Figma and Adobe simply for to see whether it works. That's all.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So yeah, so basically, like Kaushik had mentioned, this we can use this this to see the UI, and like Venkat had mentioned that we can export it to XML if we want. So basically, this is the whole Figma and the use the what do you say, the design tool. So yeah, so now I think we can go to our next case study unless anyone has any other doubts in this. And yeah, you can see my screen, right? Yeah, so these are few connections and how we can do the template. So for this scenario, we had chosen a desktop and desktop size, and we got the the size, the structure of the area, and then we can add the UI icons and things like that in that. Yeah, so that's it. Does anyone have
So
any other doubts?
so basically the two main things in this Figma is this pages and the connections. So in the pages we can design any pages like he has designed some reply page and mail page and everything. And then the next one will be connecting those pages with each other. Like Pranav, actually you can show one example like go
Okay. Yeah.
select any
So
one connection.
if you can
So
see, yeah, tell.
go to the source of the connection.
Okay, 1 second. So,
So basically, we first design all these
yeah.
pages separately, and then we connect those pages. Like I'll say that when I click on this button, right, that microphone button, it should go to the next page.
Yeah, so you can see the interaction details. There is an option called on click, on drag while hovering. So basically, we're just seeing as a designer, we want to see when the user does these kinds of actions, then to what page we want to navigate to, and see how it looks like. So basically, that's the whole objective here. We want to navigate or create an overlay. So these are the basic things which can be done, and to which page we want to direct it to. So basically, it's an action, and the way we want to do that action and to which page we want to do it to. So reply page. So and the animation will be instant, dissolve, move and move out. So basically these are few animations. Yeah, so that is one thing for interaction details.
Yeah, so with respect to app design, these are the core two things, right? With respect to design, that is like how the page, how each page looks, and how we navigate from each page to one other page. So those two things we try to simulate here and see how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so does anyone else have any other questions?
Okay. I think no questions. We can move on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So next, the next case study will be done by Abhinand. So yeah.
Yeah,
Abhinand,
I will share it.
yeah, thank you.
I'm having some issues.
1 minute. Sorry for the delay. Yeah. So so basically, this is the third interactive case. Abhinand, please continue. Abhinand.
Yeah, hello.
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 Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, so we are going to ask us about pictures.
Yes, everyone. So we will be having a short exercise. I would require everyone to, have any notebook or any document, Google document or something open. So it's just a interactive exercise. You can, we want you to, analyze and any application. We have given three examples. You can choose any other also if you are interested. So analyze these three applications, any one of these applications with respect to the universal techniques which we had learned today, and then you can share some of the points which you have created, or yeah. So that's one task. I would like everyone can do it now. So you can, with respect to the principles of design which we have done today, you can analyze Gmeet or Amazon Prime Video or Google Pay. So, and to the right we have given the 7 principles which we had seen today. You can note that and you can analyze them.
Yeah, it's similar to our great anniversary.
Yeah, similar to
So,
how we analyzed Gmail, like we went through each of the principles and then saw whether it violated the principle or it adhered to the principle. So basically, like that, you take any one of the three things, or you, even if you want to take a different thing, also no issues. You can take that also, and you take that and you try analyzing using these 7 principles. Like for example, like equitable, whether Gmeet is violating any of the equitable universal design principles, like that. And then if it's a pro or a con, both. And then at the end, basically all the cons are what you can improve in the product. So we would like you to basically do make an analysis like this, and then at the end we can discuss about like what all improvements can be made for any of these products.
yeah, you don't have to worry about whether the improvement is better or not. It's just simply whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, like I said, no need to think about whether that improvement is possible or feasible, or like whether it can be done technologically and all those things. Like so, for example, when we said that we are doing text to speech using in that Gmail, we generally during that process of thinking about those improvements, we generally don't think about how it will be done, like whether we'll use some data like neural networks or anything like that. We don't think about those things. We only think about what whether this technology is there, whether we can use it in this improvement, like that. So no need to think too much about whether the technology is possible. Just we need to think about what all improvements can be made based on these principles.
Yeah, so we can have like 10-15 minutes for this session, this task, and and everyone can put their points so we can discuss on that. Thank you.
Yeah, you can also ask any doubts if you have now also. Yes, for Google Meet engagement control, minimize your self feed, yeah, and then unpin to make the presentation tile smaller and view of the person. Yeah, that's also a really good example. Highlight different speakers and tiles for a better experience. Yeah, again, and as you can see, like while I'm talking, my tile is like highlighted with whatever like blue color or something, so you can clearly see who is talking in the meet.
Yeah, correct. And it's if you see from the universal design principle, it's perceptible information because you can perceive that this person is talking. So that's a good example there. Yeah. And for Google Page, these viewpoints are really good. I like it's a good analysis, I would say. Like home screen is very simplified, and the intuitive search at home screen, and yeah. So you can basically it's flexible and it's easy to use. And for Google Pay onboard and setup make a payment, send a money to friend, good, make a payment to business, rather than store or card details. Okay, good. Yeah. And one more point from the design perspective, you can say this, it is tolerance to error. So basically, if you're doing a transaction, so you can actually come back from the transaction, and you can create a, you can redo the transaction if you feel you have done any mistake. So that is one good design principle which you can think of. These points are also
Amazon,
really good. Yeah.
yeah, Amazon Prime Video, easy to use. Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to use and flexible tiles for each category. Yeah, again, in Amazon Prime Video, you can see like for different languages also they give, like for English movies, and then for some series and like Tamil movies or any language movies, they give separate like a list. It's basically a tiled one, like a horizontal set of tiles, and they categorize it also really well. Google Play easy login with 4-number code. Yeah, exactly. That again comes under ease of use.
Yeah, or the effort, basically the less effort, physical effort we need to put.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, Google Pay protects your information using Google Pay's collection of top security features that help detect fraud, prevent hacking, and identity. Your Google Pay information is stored on secure servers. Yeah, good, Samir Rahman sir. It's good, but like from a design perspective, if you see, these are more of like technical details. But from a design perspective, you can see that then security, then we can basically say tolerance to error. So yeah, we can think from that perspective. Flexible for payment options, and store previous transactions, so reduce effort. Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree with that. And equitable use, because everyone can use it, who are and it is more understandable for everyone. Feel free to unmute. Yeah, you can speak and explain our thoughts and analysis also. It will be really great. And yeah, show previous transactions. Yeah, correct. You can show the previous transactions, but doesn't have wallet. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, hi. Okay, this is Shilpa here. So I was sharing some insights on Google Pay. So when you enter, it's a very simple 4-digit code. The whole process seems extremely equitable. I think everyone is comfortable doing that because numbers are universal. So there is not really a language problem there.
Correct.
Then, secondly, then comes the the options for payment. So it has added a new feature. Earlier there was no. The headmast now has a instant click, which gives you the option of multiple types of payments, like your TV bills, DTH, mobile recharge, is that. So earlier you had to go in and search for that. Now there is a top button which takes you directly to that, which is a good thing. And also it saves your previous payments to people and your businesses on the home page. So it is very easy to track. If you want to find somebody and make a repetitive payment, so it's very easy. You don't even have to go to your search book. So it's right there. So it's very flexible. It's intuitive, and also I think equitable, because it's something which is easy and comfortable for everybody to do. Then in options, it gives you different modes of payment. Like it gives you a QR code. It lets you do a mobile number search, or it lets you also enter a number directly. And also it gives you the option of creating your business accounts. So it's basically covering all parameters. In promotions, they have these reward points, which I think is very perceptive and intuitive, and also to add motivational for people, for the users basically. And also it's very easy and very comfortable to track your account details. How much balance is there, or how much transactions you've made from a certain account, and also if you want to install a new UPI. The only hindrance which I find here is, one, it's more technical though, that there is a huge payment failure all the time, and two, they don't have a wallet, which is, I think it is subjective. Some people like it, some don't. And one good thing is that it does not save or directly connect with your credit cards, which is a little issue with Paytm, where because a lot of frauds happen in Paytm, and apparently with Google Pay the number is quite less, I suppose. So overall, I think it's a great product. Only the customer, reaching the customer care, and the technical issues and payment failure are the only hindrances which I feel. So I personally feel, being a very very simplified interface and more to do with the digits. So it kind of caters to most of the universal design elements.
Yeah, correct. Thank you so much. You have actually made most of the principles. Yeah, the application, as you have mentioned, it has been added. Like the one which you told about the multiple payment. So like the TV bill or gas bills or something. So basically, they have put it under one banner or one section. So it's basically
Yes.
trying to save the size of the area, because the area which the information is provided is also very important. We should not have too much content. So basically that is one good point. And yeah, many
Also,
other.
space also it is saving. Plus, it is saving your effort where you have to search for every single type of bill payment. So only with one button, it is showing you all the options on one page.
Correct, exactly.
They're actually.
Yeah, really, really good analysis there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I see through chat also many people have mentioned about Amazon Prime and Google Meet. And yeah, so one sir has mentioned equitable. Yes, it is equitable. So flexible issue. If user wants to control.
That
Yeah.
person can speak.
Sorry.
You can unmute to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you are
Please unmute yourself and explain so it'll be others can understand it. And yeah.
Myself.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the only issue as far as the flexibility is concerned, in the Google Meet, if I want to control volume control of the speaker, we need to control our speaker, system speaker. Instead, if you want to have a button to control, like if you have a YouTube player have its own volume control.
Yeah, correct.
So
Good.
this kind of
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I have actually observed many times where we students also have sometimes faced that, like when there are like during classes also, when we want to increase or decrease the volume, we can understand that. So it's a really good point. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Then one more issue, so network issue and all that. If you get disconnect and reconnect or rejoin, it again start a new session. So if you have a previous chat or previous some conversation, that get lost.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah. So it happening in our daily sessions. If sometimes rejoin, what are the previous chat and all that, it get vanish and start with the new one.
It's lost.
Yeah, true.
Also, one thing that in Google Meet, we are not able to reduce or increase the size of the windows that we want to. It is only those 3-4 customized layouts, that we have to use. Like if I want the presentation to show on my full screen, I can't do that.
Full screen.
Or if I want to reduce the width of the chat box, so it is basically eating up into 1/4 of the screen. If I want to make it narrow, I can't. So there are limitations in terms of layouting.
Especially if you capture the whole space becomes smaller. Yeah.
Correct. So like Abhinand mentioned, the captions, when we turn on the captions, so basically it consumes the bottom half of the page. So it basically is the size issue right there. Even captions makes the screen smaller. Correct. And Samuel Rahman sir has mentioned that whiteboarding in Google Meet can help share sketch ideas. Yeah, that's also a really good idea, because you can actually share the ideas and things through whiteboard, and because of that it is easy to use for others also. So that is one great point. And Karthikeyan has mentioned, instead of sharing our entire screen, we can share a particular tab. Yeah, so it's basically flexible, because we can customize, or we have the control of what we want to share or which screen we want to share. So basically that is the idea.
That's the advantage, because right now that's what I am also doing. I have shared my PPT screen, but at the same time I can also look at the chat.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Also, I think the presentation screen, like if somebody else is presenting, a lot of times the thing is that the presentation screen is smaller, and a lot of times the data over there is very, very minute. So you have to tell the presenter to actually zoom on the screen, where I think the option should be there with us if we want to zoom the presentation screen and see something which is not very readable.
Yeah, correct. Actually, this feature is enabled in mobile phones, but I don't think it's available in desktop. Yeah, in mobile phones, you can zoom into the presentation and see more clearly, but in desktops, I think it's an issue. Yeah, correct. So
Because I
that.
had to tell 2-3 presenters, in this course only to actually zoom because the text was so small that it was not readable.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I think that is one thing. And
Yes.
also, yeah, as he said, now the volume control. Also, there is no option to mute if you want to mute the speaker. Like there is a option to mute our own microphone and our own camera, but there is no
Yeah.
option to mute the speaker if, like, suddenly it just
Yeah. So that requires that control, that VCR control. If it is there, then we can do everything.
correct.
Y-
So that I
Correct.
think is a very critical feature which needs to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, so that is basically it comes under the equitable use. So everyone should have the control, and they can see whatever is comfortable for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
believe in the Microsoft Teams, I think that option is there, the ability to mute others. But I think mostly the reason why Google doesn't keep that is because it's like an open, right? Anyone can join. So I believe they did it for security reasons,
Yeah.
so that others shouldn't mute others.
Yeah, even
I believe that's the same. Yeah, that's the same reason why
Of
we
course,
cannot.
there might be some reason. There might be some thought process by why these VCR buttons are not on that front end. There might be some thought process behind this.
No, as in
So
you
that
should
is-
have the option to at least do it for your own laptop. No, you
Yeah.
don't have to mute other people. But if you don't want to listen to the presenter, or for some reason for 2 minutes, you want to mute
Yes.
doing something
yes.
else. So that option should be there with us.
Or
I
simultaneously,
believe
I
that-
want to attend 2 online meetings.
Yeah, maybe
I'm
I get a
attending,
call
yeah.
and there is so much of disturbance behind, so you just want to mute it for a minute and do something else. So
Continue.
that option should be there.
Yes.
Yes, I believe there is actually one workaround to do that. What you can do is you have opened this tab in a Chrome or Firefox. Right? You can right click that tab and there'll be an option called mute site. If you click on that, it will actually mute the entire site. But the problem is, if you have multiple G Meets open, right, it will mute everything. So that's the problem. If you are in 2 different meets and you want to mute one meet, that is not possible. Yeah, that is a big issue with G Meet again. I believe in the morning session there's a I think Kenneth, he talked about app called Discord. In that there is that option. There's option to both like mute yourself and to deafen. Deafen, what it'll do is you won't be able to hear what others are speaking. So it's like to reducing the volume to 0 basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually, so there are different applications, and like the sir had mentioned that they have put some thought process, but here we would like to know how we perceive the application, how we analyze it, and we can understand the process. So so like Kaushik mentioned, there is a Discord, so you have the freedom to control the volume, the mute the speaker, or the things like that. So that is with us. So that feature they have not provided here because they would have had some other thought process. So but I really liked the way people have mentioned the their analysis, and it's very interesting, like very intuitive. So I really appreciate. Yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like some more.
Anyone has any analysis on Amazon Prime Video?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There are a couple of, I use these OTT platforms like day in and day out all the time. So I find there is far more flexibility in Netflix compared to Amazon Prime. It does not easily give you the access to subtitles and language options. And also, hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Also, it does not give you the options of trailers in a lot of videos. And thirdly, when when the video is playing and you want to turn on the subtitles, so that is a little complicated process to go into this thing and turn the subtitles. And audio languages are also way less than what you when you compare it to Netflix. And another thing which is a problem, I think, across all the OTT platforms, that when you skip the introduction 2 or 3 times, like you're watching a series, every time the new episode starts, the whole introduction will play. It should adapt and learn that if you are skipping the intro 2-3 times, in the next episode, it should not show the introduction and it should just skip. Because watching that introduction and ending numbers is very irritating with every episode, especially they're like 5-10 seasons and they're 100 episodes. It's a very daunting task to do that with every single episode when it plays.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So actually, like I think in Amazon they have provided the feature called skip intro, so you can skip the intro to the particular place where the intro gets concluded.
No, that is there. Like, but the thing is, why should you have to skip it every time? It should adapt and learn that when you have done it 2-3 times, and if you're watching a series, it should not show the intro every time.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Who's interested in watching the introduction every
That's a
time?
good idea.
Yeah, correct. So that basically from the design perspective, you can see it's not flexible because you don't have the control.
It's
Like
not a very user-friendly thing because it's extremely irritating.
yes, ma'am. I agree. True. Yeah, and
Okay.
so yeah, my
what is-
see. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone else has any?
Other principles.
Yeah, there's one more thing which I always have a trouble with. Like I'm searching for a movie or a series or anything, when I type the name, in the list it shows the name immediately. Like I typed War Horse, so it will show War Horse in the search list. But when you click on War Horse, it is not there only on the website.
Yeah, they suggest
will show you-
similar things instead.
So that is
Yeah.
extremely bugging because you suddenly think, oh, it is there, but when you open, it is not
Yeah.
there. So that is another issue with the Amazon Prime, which I feel.
I think even Netflix does that, but they'll never tell that they don't have a certain movie. They'll instead try to suggest things which are similar to that.
No, suggestions are different, but in Amazon Prime, it's a little different.
Oh yeah, in Prime they suggest, but it doesn't show anything after that. That's true.
Exactly. So most of the time, you will not find anything over there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, a lot of times actually some movies are also not enabled for particular locations. They show up on Google search, but they don't show up on the actual website.
So eventually you find out that they are available on AmazonPrime.com US, but in India it's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
There's an app called Just Watch if you guys want stuff like that. It tells you which OTT service has the movie you're looking for, movie or
Yeah.
show. And yeah, there's also ones if you have a VPN. There's also apps for
Yeah,
getting,
they have everything. Like you can just watch, but the quality and all is much better on this. So.
Yeah, Netflix is so optimized; it works even on devices which are not in like current OS support. Also, like I have a really old like tablet, and it's still only Netflix works. Hotstar will crash when I open it. Also,
Hotstar will crash everywhere. It crashes everywhere. It has too many bugs. A lot of user interface issues. So I think essentially that. The only good thing with Amazon Prime is that it gives you the IMDb rating. So at least you can decide if you want to watch it or
Yeah,
not,
that's
which is not there on.
specific information. Yeah, that's good.
There is one very big problem with Amazon. I just recollected. All of these OTT platforms, especially Amazon Prime, if you have watched a particular movie or a series, it does not show you any notification or any kind of signage which shows you that you have already seen it.
I'm sorry. I didn't get you actually.
See, like I have watched Game of Thrones, I have watched some other series. I've already watched it on Amazon Prime. Okay. So one fine day, I'm again trying to search something. See, a lot of times we don't remember. A lot of series names are like that you don't remember if you've seen it or not. A movie which you have seen or not. So if you've already seen it, it should show some kind of a tick or a notification or a thumbs up that it has already been watched. So that you don't again repeat. You end up watching the same program and midway you suddenly realize, "Arey, ye to maine dekha hua pehle."
Yes, ma'am. So, yeah, for that, I think like I think that
one
is
counterpoint could that to be like generally with one account many people use it. So
Sorry?
yeah, with one account, right? Many people can. Family members, like many family members, can use the same thing on a same account, right? So in that case, it will be a little bit difficult.
No,
Like,
since they have the options of creating profiles, so if it is my profile, it should show me if I have already seen something in this. Because of this, I have ended up watching I don't know how many series multiple times, and by the first end of episode, I realized, oh, this I've already seen. You know,
Ma'am,
and I even have to go back to the same exercise searching for something else.
yeah, for that actually you'll after you complete a video, they'll show a start over option or resume playing, so that in the tile itself you can see the option of if you have already watched it, if you want to start it again or you want to continue watching from that particular episode. So basically they want to provide the user that okay, they have seen it or not, so that is the kind of a checkpoint they give. So that is the one way. Yeah,
It is there in Netflix. It shows you the episodes you watched. They have that red line below it.
yeah, in Prime also it's there
Amazon
actually.
Prime, I have never seen it, so I always end up, watching, like, it's not in between. If you have seen the whole series, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
In between, I know. लेकिन अगर आपने पूरा देखा है, and again someday you want to watch something, it will never show you that you have already seen it.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe after you've completely seen it, I think it removes that line.
Yeah, it resets.
Progress.
Also.
Yeah, so if you have completed the series, no, so it does not show you that you have already seen. But in Netflix, when you open the episodes, there are red lines below. So वो देख के you can recollect that okay, this you've already watched. But वो Amazon Prime में नहीं है.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's about it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Like that's a really interesting way of looking how Amazon, how we use Amazon. So I think like we can go to the next speaker. So Kenneth will be explaining about his topic. So I would like to thank everyone. So that is it from our
Thank you everyone for your
Thank you.
cooperation.
yeah. Thank you so much. I think this session would have been really useful to get a perspective, like how others also view this product. So yeah, I think that's it. Kenneth can take over. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pranav. Just 1 second, let me share my screen.
Push it, cut the top. Sure.
Yeah, okay, sure.
All right. I think you can see my screen.
Yes.
So I'm going to be just walking you guys through one of my projects, just so that there was a lot of people who were asking about the process which it would take to do prototyping and design for a product. So this was for my HCA course during my program. So I'll just walk you through the entire process, how we did certain analysis and all of that. And so yeah, that was a team of 5. I was one of the team members, and basically it was like a fintech product. So you're looking at the finance industry, and so it was basically since this was I think 2 years back, it was all of these e-payment apps were very common, the Google Pay and Paytm, etc. So it's basically just introducing the sector, and then how finance has become dominated by e-finance now, and how apps like PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm all have become very like mainstream, and it's almost day-to-day use at this point. Everyone has a UPI account, and this particular case is as we all know, it's pretty unique to India also because of how easy UPI is to use. So like even the way these apps work have they basically targeted towards the Indian way of implementing UPI. So also I'd like to note that these comparisons which I'll be doing are from how these apps looked back then. They've fixed a lot of the issues which I've pointed out over here, but then just the whole UI has been refreshed in I think all of these apps right now. So yeah, so this is e-payment. So first I'll just go through like a competitive analysis of what the current market has to offer. So there's PhonePe, Google Pay, and Paytm were my initial targets because they were the biggest in terms of like popularity. And so we'll first look at PhonePe. So yeah, PhonePe, we all know it's owned by Flipkart. It's I think it's I forgot. Yeah, 2016 they were launched, and yeah, it was one of the first apps which was built on UPI. So they had a lot of time to develop it, and I think this was in 2019. I think this layout. So yeah, so what I did was my initial attempt to identify issues with the current current products was I was trying to find how many clickables were there. That was a personal problem of mine which I noticed. I was noticing that I was overwhelmed by how many options were available. Like I opened this app and I have like there are 5 sections and a total of 31 clickable items. So there were 31 items which I could click the moment I opened the app, which is not necessarily good because for me it was a bit overwhelming. With time it was helping, like since I knew where to look, but there was most of the time I was not using almost 60% of this. And there were 5 working areas as I've like categorized it. So there were 5 sections to each to the home panel. So what I was doing is basically trying to analyze what are the benefits and the negatives of each of these. So one good thing about PhonePe is they provide this one-touch QR scanner. It's just available on the top. You can directly start scanning, and there are upfront direct buttons for money transfer and one-touch payments and etc. And also there are suggestions from your contacts from frequently done transactions, etc. And also there was a history. This was something which will be relevant because it wasn't quite available on the other apps that easily. So these were the main working areas that were that was interesting to me. And so yeah, this was the history page. So when you open the history tab, they had this clean UI which showed everything from the receiving merchant, the bank account, transfer icons to show whether it was outward payment or inward payment. And also there was no there were filters and categories over here which are given like to show whether the money was sent, received. You can basically find what you're looking for in your history very easily. So this was a very strong a benefit of PhonePe, and they were doing this right. So what I did was I categorized the positives and negatives. So the blue ones are positive. So basically it was providing accessible payment history, better profile options because you can like change profiles also. And yeah, there was upfront money transfers and quick access buttons. So these were things which I saw, as positives. But then at the same time, the home screen was too bloated. There was not a great prioritization of features because there were a few things which, it didn't apply to everyone, or at least they should have had an option to, simplify the UI for users who don't use that. Look, I've never used any of the electricity bill payment or the all of those transfers, and I don't need almost a third of my screen being used up by that. So that was one thing I noted. And so yeah, that was PhonePe. So what I saw next was I had a look at Google Pay, and this was the older app. For some reason, there was already a refresh at the time, but I didn't receive that update for some reason. I think it was because of my phone's aspect ratio. But this is how it used to look, and it had this Tez mode to do wireless transfers of cash without actually sharing your information. And basically, it was Google's attempt at implementing UPI. So it was pretty popular at the time also with multiple features. So doing the same analysis here, one benefit you can directly see over here is that when you see the framework of how it's done, there are only 3 working areas and only 11 clickable items. There's just things on top, and then most of the clickables are actually just your recent contacts. So there's almost 8 of them which go right over there. So that was one thing which I really liked about the app initially because it was very clean. But then at the same time, so let's see like what each of the working areas were providing. So the first one was the top area was giving your account details and your UPI ID can be copied. And then Tez mode was this. The Tez mode was actually unique at the time. No other application had something like this. I think it used like sound waves to communicate whether or not the person you're transferring is nearby. And yeah, it was a pretty, I didn't personally use it, but I found the idea of not sharing your personal details for money transfers pretty beneficial. So that was something I noted from that. And you also had list of recent contacts and all the recent payments in the bottom. So yeah, and they also had this really unique draw thing which like basically a lot of people are using this application just because of the fact that Google Pay was providing this scratch card system, and it's become really popular. And I'm sure like I've noticed it in all the other applications now. Maybe not just as a scratch card, but there's always this cashback kind of method. And so people would, participate in it. They get a cashback, they scratch the card, and if they successfully get something, so they might get some money. And so that was something which kept people loyal to the application. Even if it had some shortcomings, they were happy they were getting some cashbacks. So that was one thing which I noted. And again, so I did the same split of positives and negatives. So the positives were, of course, the reward system was a very, it enticed users to stay on the platform. And they also had smart replies, since Google has such, advanced ML stuff. They were providing these automated chat replies where you can just say that you've finished the payment, and you don't really need to worry about doing the actual chat part. And also the fact that they had a chat when a lot of the applications didn't have it at the time. And also very good use of white space. There was a lot of, it was a very minimal design where you know where each thing is. But then at the same time, because as a consequence of this overtly minimal design, a lot of the features were buried. Like they had a bunch of features which were all the way, hidden inside the settings. Like you had to scroll to the bottom of the page to open your history, and the history cannot be managed. You could not sort it, and it's just, there was a lot of stuff which was not easy to access. And it was most probably because of the fact that they used the one card which they had just to show all of your recent transactions. So that is, a good example of, a violation of Hicks law. All of these laws I'll be talking about later on, and based on my solution for how I, made a solution for this. So yeah, so moving along anyways, it was buried features. And just a second. Yeah, so that was Google Pay. And so finally we had Paytm, and Paytm was honestly the worst of the batch at the time. Even though they had a good wallet system, and Paytm was famous for that. They had probably the most popularity initially, and they had a lot of these, they had their own wallet system in addition to UPI. So, but the problem with this application, as you will see now, is, they had a total of 6 working areas, and that resulted in around 26 buttons on the home screen. So that was again a very overwhelming experience, especially when nearly half of them were advertising and related links like that. So again, I split up the stuff, and it was a lot of unnecessary clutter. There was a lot of things which were not really required for a payments application, and you will actually see some of that. So the one good thing about Paytm is the acknowledgement page, because I've noticed myself when I finish a transaction, people generally like to see the acknowledgement, person who you just paid. And Google Pay would just show a tick mark without showing the amount you've paid, or all of this has changed now, but it used to be just a check mark, and there was no way of verifying whether it was actually done to that person and how much was done. So that was one thing which I liked, where it was it was a detailed acknowledgement screen showing the recipient and the transfer status. So, but then there's also all this, this is Paytm. What you're seeing on the footage is the same application which is supposed to do your bank transfers. So you have all of this astrology and gossip news and games and quizzes, which are obviously unnecessary. And they slow down the application. They provide no benefit for the actual core functionality of what the app is for. And that was something which obviously had to be lost. So again, splitting the same way for the benefits and the negatives. So there was color-based partitioning, which was good. They had a very unique image with the dark blue and the light blue thing. It was very identifiable. And then a very effective acknowledgement page, but at the same time, a very cluttered interface and a lot of unnecessary bloatware within the application. So these were the 3 main comparisons I made for the initial understanding. But then I also wanted to have a look at these other 2 applications, which were actually popular like universally. It wasn't like India specific or PayPal specific. UPI specific. But PayPal and Splitwise both were the tools for financial management. And so I'll just show what Splitwise is. Basically, Splitwise is an application. For those who don't know, it's an application to split your bills. So if you have certain payments which are pending with your friends, you just split the bill with that person, and all of your pending payments and all your pending like receiving stuff is all listed together, and people can keep track of it over there. So it had a lot of benefits. They had a very clean, minimal UI, and it was just adding and removing stuff was very easy. But then the problem with that application was it didn't actually, like, you could just say that you've paid. It didn't matter. There was no actual way of verifying, since it was not tied into any application model, at least at the time. I don't use the application now, so I don't know how it is now, but at the time there was no way of actually checking if your payment was done or not. And they also had a lot of actually beneficial functions which were behind a paywall. So that, which is understandable since they are not a payment application by themselves, so they couldn't really provide those features for free. So that was Splitwise. And then I had a look at PayPal. So PayPal, obviously we all know it's a very popular tool, and it was probably one of the pioneers in that fast instant transaction industry, where everyone across the world was using it. And it was popular from way before UPI was even introduced. And the main benefit of it is you can see the user interface here, where they have basically just send, receive buttons and your balance, which is practically what you need from a wallet type application. You're trying to pay or you're trying to receive, and you need to know how much is in your wallet. And they got that extremely right. They knew exactly what stuff was important and what was to be included, and it was very clearly defined, very efficient, and very very clean. But the problem is they didn't have this UPI support, so I wanted to basically derive something from this and utilize it in the final application. So also one major benefit from PayPal is the multiple currency transactions. You could do it from any one type of currency to another, so it used to do all of that automatically. So we saw 5 applications in this finance sector, each of them with their positives and negatives. So what we saw was this: we saw positives for each, we saw negatives for each, and there were the idea was to basically remove all of these borders. That it doesn't matter that these are different applications, and then remove the negatives, obviously, and all the positives were put together in one cohesive list. So me and my team, we basically got all the positives from it and made sure to ignore and evade all of the problems they had. And that would in theory, at least on paper, it would become the most usable and ideal e-payment app currently in the market, because it had the best of all of the other stuff, and it didn't have the negatives of each. And so how did we approach that? So it was we had to brand the application, so we called it Paper, which is similar to PayPal, but then just payments as simple as paper. And since money is also paper. And the whole idea was to remove the clutter from payment applications or fintech apps. So the first thing we had a look at for this was the design systems, which I actually spoke about earlier today. So since we were building, since payment applications are primarily mobile apps first, so we were looking at the design systems for mobile. What would be the most optimal and simple way to stick within a user's existing mental model? And we had a look at the material design thing, which I spoke earlier about, and also the Apple human interface guidelines. And basically, since most of my team, we had a certain operating system, we stuck with iOS for the project, where we would use Apple's design system to help us keep the base of design. So we went with the human interface guidelines, and in particular the iPhone. So because the iPad wasn't really a target demographic for a payment application, you need something with constant connectivity, which is connected to your SIM and your SMSs to where payments would usually happen. And so basically, to going to the core of it, we are understanding what would make the product basically fit into the ecosystem smoothly. So the second step to that was establishing a good brand image. So that started with color theory. This is also something I spoke about in an earlier session, I think the first session I conducted. And so, like I said in that session, so blue is associated with comfort, professionalism, and trust. And green is often associated with wealth, growth, and money. And this is, I mean, you can see this in use already, because if you notice any bank application, they'll most probably have some blue in it, some green, or they'll have it in, there are some banks which go orange, like ING, but they'll most probably be, green or blue. Like SBI would be blue, HDFC has a lot of blue, and, Commerce Bank has green. So all of those, that was generally a trend in the industry already. So what we did was, we took both of those colors, mixed them both, and that gave us this nice, neat blue. And, we made a logo for it. And this was the idea, to make the app paper. So I'll just walk you through what it looked like. So each section, it had the base structure, all of the spacing from iOS. So it had all the bar and the top the status bar and the home icon, which I said were off limits before in the last session. Both of them were restricted. There was no content over there. And there was a tab, like a tabbed system for navigation at the bottom with 4 sections. So it had home, rewards, history, and settings. And the top was just a clean, the default, how the settings looks on iOS and how any application has look on iOS. And then we added a search bar, because since most of the time you open the application, even now in Google Pay, you have to go within 3-4 menus to find out what to search. And similarly, if you're trying to do a QR scan, it used to be harder now I think it's easier on Google Pay. But you had to either go to 3 dots and open a code scanner, or you have to go in one layer and then again you have to select a scan tool. So that was again put front and center and defined as a pay section. Then, since suggestions are obviously a good thing, like your recent contacts, your recent payments, that was something which is common between all of the applications. So we kept that in, with suggestions over there. And a card-based UI. So same like what I spoke about earlier, card-based UI is very prominent in mobile design. So we kept a card which had a very warm welcome to personalize the experience. And your UPI ID is front and center. You can copy it to share it with other people, and you can switch accounts. And there was like just simple 4 tools to which were like core functionality for what you would want to do. I'll talk about these sections in detail now. So always visible search. You could search for your phone numbers, contacts, UPI IDs, emails, anything. So it doesn't have to be a separate search bar for each of those items. You open a search bar, and based on the context of what you type in, it will automatically know what you're looking for, because there's no way a UPI ID is equivalent to an email ID or a contact or number. It can easily identify what is what and then search accordingly. And then an accessible QR scanner, which I just said, and a pay button just to go to the pay screen immediately. And then there's a recent list for one-touch transfer. So if you can just open the chat directly, and you can open like start a payment immediately. So that was one working area. Then the second working area was just card-based welcome message and copy and switch tools, and 4 simple buttons to navigate through your other function, like the secondary functions of the application. And the tab screens for quick access for history, rewards, and offers in one separate tab, just like Google Pay. And all of them were basically accessible by one click. You don't have to go 2 layers into everything. Tabbed systems have that benefit. So just talking about each of those things. So the payment history would be I usually actually show the application in action right now, which I have the whole XT file. But basically, it was a search bar for quick access to payments and had a clean, detailed UI showing the date, status, all of that. Tabbed views for inwards and outward remittances, and detail like filter views also. So then there's a reward screen. I'll actually be doing a demo after this so that you guys get an idea. And then yeah, settings for profile information, all of that. And also a notification screen to keep track of these third-party payment requests, since most UPI clients can get transferred from online. So, and one second, yeah. So this is just a lot of text I need to show. I forgot that this part of the presentation was usually accompanied with my demo. So 1 second. Let me actually show the demo. So there's no easier way of putting it. So the whole thing was built on Adobe XD. So we built one huge file with a huge prototype with a lot of interactions and animations, and all of it was custom built. Like none of it was based on anything else. It was just using the HCI guidelines from Apple. So let this project open, and I can run the application itself. So what you're seeing here is not a fully developed app, but it's a fully designed app. So the difference between the two is like a design prototype does not have actual code behind it. It is just a bunch of design screens linked to each other to transition between. But an app like Adobe XD basically allows you to do that with a lot of ease. So just a second. So yeah, this was the entire workspace. So let me just make this full screen. This was the entire user, the workflow. So now if I go to my prototype screen, you can see that every single display is connected to another or 3-4 others. So everything you see over here was basically a massive network of screens and overlays, etc. So that's basically how it is functioned. So now if I run the prototype, hope it still runs. So yeah, so you can see there's an app icon over there. So you click on the app, and if you force touch the application, you can do quick functions, or if you just click on the app, it opens up with the splash screen, and then it opens up the page. And so like I said, you go to the search bar, it would open up this automatic bank transfers, bill payments, and you can go back to the home screen, and it has fluid animations through all of it, so that the users are accompanied with some sense of fluidity throughout the operating system. And similarly, now what the slides were talking about. So we had a reward screen which had a bunch of the ones you've opened, the ones you've not opened, and a history tab for all of your past payments. And it was basically, you can see the inspiration from how PhonePe was working. So PhonePe had this where it showed which bank account it was from, which card number it is from, the date, and the amount, etc. So when you tap on each of them, you get a very detailed report transaction ID, and you can raise a dispute immediately, share the details to another person. And let me just go back to the call screen. So now if you're trying to do a payment, you go to the search bar, you search for the person's name, you get the contact, you click on the contact, and then you go to the pay screen directly. You type in your amount. If you want to put a note, you can put a note, fill out the note, and then once you pay, basically you get a acknowledgement screen where you can show if it's another person, if you need to show the acknowledgement screen, and then also you have direct access to any scratch cards you might get over there itself. You don't have to get normally I think Google Pay does this scratch card comes right in your face when you're showing the acknowledgement screen, which is obviously not useful. But then yeah, you can get more details, or you can go back to your home screen, and settings would give you all of your basically all of your profile related details will be at one place. You can manage all your accounts, you can lock your application since it's private information. And so yeah, that is basically it. And it also has the QR scanner where you can scan using the default camera app, and you can switch your accounts between any of your different bank accounts immediately, so you don't have to log out and log in each time. quick account shifts, and then you can copy your UPI ID and then share it across. And if you do a request, it will send a request ticket to that person you want to basically get the money from. And instead of the whole Tez mode thing, which was just a complicated way of not sharing your personal details, you put a display QR code, which is practically achieves the same thing. You get your personal details are not given out. If you don't want your name, you can toggle that off. But your UPI ID is part of your the basic transfer, and it that's basically it. Your UPI ID is given, and a QR is given, and nothing else. Your phone number and your email ID are all private, and you can share this card across if you want to quickly get payments. So yeah, going back to the presentation, so you saw all of these screens instead of me explaining it via text. So all of that was possible. But basically, what does it achieve? What has this achieved? Looking at a final product is one thing, but once you see the metrics, comparing it to what was studied before, there's a lot of questions which will rise. Like, is it good? Would you actually benefit from it? Is it worth switching an application from it? And also, since the other competition is actually by massive financial giants like Flipkart and Google, would it be worth switching over? So first thing, you see the things of the UI interaction elements. So how many interactions does it take to finish a payment? So this is a worst case. So the worst case in Google Pay would take you 9 interactions to complete a payment, whereas on paper, including a note, it would take you 5, because you already have a search bar for all of them, whereas there were 3 levels more in Google Pay back then. At least now they've streamlined their user flow a little bit more. Even Paytm has redone their homepage ever since, where they've removed all of that clutter. All those applications I'm talking about don't exist now. So it was actually a testament to how accurate the study was. So we were actually identifying flaws which the companies themselves thought were worth fixing. And so yeah, what you saw with the no unnecessary interaction, but basically it provides options for functionality. So if you open up a pay screen, but then you realize you just want to quickly change over to request, or you've done it by mistake, you can do it right at that point. You don't have to cancel that whole thing and then go to a request, because after all, it is doing a transaction with that same person. So you should be able to switch between those 2 modes, or switch between your accounts quite easily, and to give a note, and basically all of that should be clean. And so that was the number of interactions for payment. So how many interactions does it take to view the history? Is that also time consuming? So Paytm, since they didn't have exactly a normal their history was buried within 2-3 versions. You have to go within your wallet, and then you have to go to your transaction history. And Google Pay did not at the time have a manual search. You had to open they didn't have a history at all. They had manual search. You had to go through your recent transactions and find the account you were interested in, and you have to go and look at each single account. So it's not even, you can't even see all your transactions from yesterday. You have to go through all of your chats individually. You can't have an overview or get how much money you spent yesterday, for example, which is possible in PhonePe. PhonePe was probably one of the best, and we were tied with PhonePe. So that was basically because we were also providing additional stuff for full functionality with one detailed information card screen, where you can share your transaction, the details related to that, but all your the private information still stays private. You don't actually share your bank account details, because obviously you don't want to. Even though it's your app, you don't need to see your entire card number, see the status, and if you had an issue with that payment, you can raise a dispute right there. And there's a chance this is a recurring payment, so you can always send that same amount again to the same person. And if there is an issue, the person wants to verify, you can always copy and share. Just like all of these UI elements that you see are how a normal iOS app works. So the whole model of this application would work and function basically just like any default iOS application. So the user would not really need to, think too much to understand how to navigate, because all of these UI elements like this back button, the share button, and this copy share, all of this are, they are system interactions, and that is how it normally works. So there's no, it doesn't break the mental model basically. So on the whole, if you compare features, we were providing, there was also a split bill feature from Splitwise, and so all of these tools were basically trying to get right what the others were not doing. So and also, like you can see, this is pretty self-explanatory, that it was able to achieve a lot more than the competition. And that was as a result of the study, of the fact that we were able to isolate the best parts of the other applications and add, additional features on top of that. So with the groundwork of, past, applications who have attempted it, you have that groundwork, you have the positives of it, and then it makes it easier to build something on top of that. And so, yeah, basically it's, it was a complete application at that point. And since it had such a positive, like it was based on a lot of study, it was also resulting in a lot of basically the UX laws were being achieved by it. So for example, the aesthetic usability effect, all of these are named laws in HCI, which were ironically being achieved through the simple design. So users often perceive like aesthetically pleasing design as design that's more usable. It is a mental psyche thing where if something looks aesthetically pleasable, the mind tends to think that maybe it is less buggy, or maybe it is, if you, for example, like the whole Netflix conversation that was going on before, there's been times when Netflix also has bugs, but I don't remember it because of how smoothly it transitions out of it. So that is something which is an actual effect. So aesthetic usability effect by, making it look clean and aesthetic. Then there's something called the Doherty threshold, so which says that production will soar when a computer and its users interact at a pace which is lesser than 400 milliseconds. That ensures that neither the computer or the person has to wait. So every animation we've added, every interaction that we've added will react within that 400 milliseconds, because when it becomes more than 400 milliseconds, you tend to think, oh, this product is lagging, or it's slow, or my flow of events, the flow of your thought might not be able to happen at that pace. So animations have to be kept at that sharp, target of lesser than 400 milliseconds, which we did. And then Jacob's law. So Jacob's law is that users spend most of their time using other things. Like there is no way a person will spend most of their time using your tool. So which basically means that most of their time goes in using tools which are not yours, which basically builds their own form of a mental model. And so that means when you are building a site, you need to make sure your site or your product works very similar to how the other applications also work. So that is what comes in over here. What I'm trying to highlight with this picture is the design style which I use from the Apple guidelines. So all of these guidelines, you can see it's even matching up from the image I showed earlier. And that's because that's how they've designed certain, like organizing content and how buttons should be placed and how text should be placed. All of it is in the same position as Apple intends applications on their platform to work. And they know better because it's their platform. So it fits within that mental model in Jacob's law. And then there's a bunch of other features which are kind of similar, where the law of common region is that elements tend to be perceived into groups if they're sharing a boundary. So when I put something into a card, for example, over here, that all of these 4 items are related to each other. You know that this area, since it's separated from the other area, that this one and that one might be related to the text above. And so law of similarity, since these icons are similar, all of these icons have similar functionality. Since these buttons look the same, that they have, they all are buttons trying to do a certain task. So same with law of proximity, the spacing, everything matters because people will tend to perceive it in that way. So all of these laws were also applicable over here. and Hicks law, which I mentioned earlier, where basically Hicks law is that the time it takes to make a decision will increase with the number and complexity of choices. So that's what I was doing that analysis of how many interactions it takes to achieve the task. And as you saw that, in most cases, we had the lowest interactions, and it was basically getting the job done with the least number of interactions and least amount of complexity. And that basically doesn't violate Hicks law, unlike few of the other applications. Then you have the law of Prägnanz. So that is that, this is just simple. It's people will perceive and interpret complex images as the simplest form possible. So that basically means like that if you have a complex structure over here, like we got all of these circles and everything, but they're all there in this one particular area. So you just think that this whole thing has to be one. You won't think that each of these are individual buttons. It's just again a mental thing. And this is how the card looks. So when you tap on a card, it will open your basically you'll have to swipe it open and it will give you a congratulations card. And then Fitts law. So Fitts law is a very popular law. It states that the time to acquire a target is like a function of the distance and the size of the target. So distance 2. So if you are at point A and you're trying to get to the search bar, this is the time it takes to get over here. And so basically the time to get your task done would be a function of both that distance from your point A and the size of the target. So you need to make sure the most important functions are the biggest over there. So you can see the prioritization of features over here itself. Like the most common thing in a payment application will be the payments. So they have the biggest icon and the biggest space given to it. And then the secondary functions have smaller icons. And then the third one will have, these are less likely to be used. And then these will be used for tab navigation. And this one will be barely used whenever you have a third-party transfer. So they basically prioritize in that way. And then there is Miller's law. Miller's law is that the average person can only keep 7, like plus or minus 2 items in their working memory. So if you're trying to remember your phone number, if you're trying to remember someone's phone number, or you're even just checking, you're checking your history, for example, and they're reading out their phone number and you're checking if their number is right. When you read a phone number, it's hard to just take all of the 10 digits together. Like internally, you already do the split. This is actually supposed to have one more number, I think. But yeah, this is, you will perceive it as 5 and 5 better than just 10 in one go. It's actually a psyche thing where that's how you process it. It's like 7 plus or minus 2 is the ideal number of digits to keep in mind. That's why people always show the last 4 digits of the card instead of putting the whole card number over there, even for privacy reasons. But even when the full card number is there, you will see it split into parts of 4, because it's easier to take it in chunks rather than one go. And then you have basically all of these laws put together will make a complete application, and that was the application that we built. And so just briefly, just to cover what tools I used to make it, and what other tools can also be used in this process if you're trying to build an application. So I used Adobe XD. It was free to use. I think it's still free to use for the most part. It's cross-platform. It's there on both macOS and Windows. It's universally recognized since Adobe is already like synchronous with anything design related. But it also had support for almost every form of interaction. This again, these slides are from last year, and they've added a lot more support now with hover interactions and a bunch of other interactions. Basically, enabling a lot more ways of you trying to prototype your application. And all of your prototypes, how I tested this was, you can just connect your device, your phone, and open the XD app on your phone, and then you will get the full application, what you just saw as a preview on my laptop. You can use the full application on your phone, and it will look and feel like an actual app. Obviously, there will not be any code for it to be consistent, but whatever triggers you set will work and you can basically see how usable it is on your device. And then there's Sketch. Sketch is basically the industry standard for interface design, and it's been like that for years because they were one of the first applications to provide prototyping tools, wireframing and prototyping tools. But the problem is it's only available on Mac OS and it's paid. So it's all. If you've noticed why designers generally have MacBooks, it's because of this. It's because Sketch is always available, and it's a requirement in almost any design field, like to know either Sketch. But now, thanks to XD, it's become, people are diversifying into both, either this or that. And so yeah, that is Sketch. And then there's InVision, which is also popular, along with I think Figma. But yeah, InVision has extensive interactive prototype support. I think it's got a free trial use. I've not personally used it, but I've heard positive feedback about it. They have the InVision Studio also if you want to build an application with it, so that's also useful. And then there's Figma, which is completely online. They're mostly free to use, but then it's also the fact that you can share your projects across a team very, very efficiently, especially now with the pandemic. It's a pretty useful tool to have. A lot of people have moved to Figma because of how easy it is to collaborate on projects. And then there's Protopie. So Protopie is one of the best prototyping tools. So wireframing is the first step where you build the actual individual screens, and then once you connected what you saw in my project, the lines, they will be connecting each of those screens and enabling functionality, and that is a working prototype. Protopie is one of those prototyping tools which makes it closer to an actual application. So it will be more than what you saw right now. It will be very realistic. It puts a mini app and like an actual app with code on your device, and then you can test it out natively. So that's one benefit of that. And then Balsamiq is a good place to start if you have no experience. It's for simple wireframing and low fidelity prototypes where it's just for you to draw. Like even the name itself, Balsamiq, is actually a type of wood which is used for prototyping models in the aircraft industry, for example. So people first build it with Balsamiq, and that's generally a prototyping tool, and that's the first step before actually trying to attempt. So low fidelity prototypes are very useful, and what you saw on XD would be a high fidelity prototype because it's closer to the final product. But a low fidelity prototype is the first step. You need to go to a drawing board, and then you can draw with your sketch or whatever. You can just sketch around and have an idea of what you want the product to be, and that should be an iterative effort. So this is a good starting point for that. So yeah, those are some good prototyping tools to start with. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, and also I'll just 1 second, I'll just show you I think I didn't show the reward, how it works. So when you tap on a reward, it shows scratch here, but then the whole actual scratching through the entire card thing I didn't see the point of that. So you just clear it with a click, and then the suspense is cleared directly, and then you can share it if you want. So yeah, that's it. It's something simple. But yeah, so if you have any questions, you can ask me right now. Thanks a lot for I'm sorry, I didn't see the chat till now. Let me open it. Yeah, thanks a lot for the feedback. We actually tried to make this a real product, but then the app started updating the features which we were trying to propose. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about prototyping or where to start, you can ask me about that. Standard Chartered has both colors. Yes. It's Fish Market. Oh, yeah, it was done in the Apple keynote. That's true. Yeah, the whole thing was done in Apple keynote. All of my presentations so far. There was a lot of chat which I didn't see. Okay. Yeah, so there are no other questions. Yeah, tools for prototype design. What I just spoke about. Let me open the thing once again. So these are great tools for prototyping. You can start with Adobe XD if you want proper high fidelity prototyping. It's a very easy to use tool. It's actually open over here, so I can show you. So it's very simple. So what I've done over here is, this is my home screen, and so all of these elements are interactable, and I can edit it. So I can just change this. You can see like all the work that's gone into it. So this is a scrollable window here versus all of the segments in each of my basically trying to get the spacing right. All of this is based on the Apple guidelines which they've provided, and Adobe XD is a high fidelity prototype because it's close to the actual thing. So I mean, you can use it for low fidelity also. Adobe is free to use. I don't know if it's open source. It's free to use. You can just I don't know if they've made it paid now. They said it was free to use for the next 3 years, but it's still free to use. You don't need to have a Creative Cloud license. It's a very powerful app, and you can see how clean the UI is. All you have is these tools. So if you want to make a square, you just make a square, and then if you want to change it in 3D, you can do this, and then you can change it in 3D. All of this stuff is it's very useful, and for both website and mobile design is one of the best applications I've personally used. It's very powerful. This session we could know which app is better for payment. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know how it is now. I should probably update this for modern tools. I don't know how they made the changes. I need to do an analysis again. But they've improved a lot now. I've noticed, except Google Pay. I still hate Google Pay. It's become laggy and slow, and they've added more bloatware to it. So yeah, I'm still not a fan of Google Pay, but things like PhonePe and even Paytm have improved a lot since this presentation. It supports both website and mobile applications. Yeah, it does. So I'll actually show you this also. So for paper itself, I had another, I had a desktop version also, which is just a small project. It was done within 2 hours for an examination. But yeah, it was just a rough idea of what a website version of this application could look with analytics, and so it's done only within an hour. So I don't think it's fully realized yet. But yeah, it's a good Adobe XD is a really good application. You can see you can just use this as a artboard to just throw things over here, and then you can, whatever you need, you can put it within these individual artboards. So yeah. Is there anything else I missed? Standard Chartered has both colors, yes. Yeah, if there's nothing else, I think we can end the session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kenneth. Pranav, Abhinav, and Kaushik. Really, it is very interesting indeed.
Thanks, sir.
So if there are any other questions, participants can ask them. If not, we will take a short break till 4:30, and we will have yoga session today at 4:30. Yeah, ma'am, tea break.
You can use Figma online tool. Yeah, Figma is also really good. Generally, Figma is used a lot nowadays. That's what I mentioned. You can either use Figma or XD. Santosh said they're asking if yoga is coming in the test.
Ma'am, maybe if you want.
All right, then. I think we can end it there. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks.